I'm here today with Anthony Scaramucci, who's the founder of SkyBridge Capital. And Anthony, cannot thank you enough for your time today. Really appreciate it. Before we begin, let's talk a little bit about your background and what it was like growing up as a kid.
So my dad, he originally started as a laborer, never gone to college, spent 2 years in the Army. My mother was a homemaker. He directly benefited from what I call the light blue-collar job, meaning he had there was such demand for labor post-World War II that he was getting paid not a white-collar wage, but he was getting paid more than you would typically get paid in a blue-collar situation. And so, in fact, most people in the post-World War boom benefited from that. My family certainly did. And so we grew up resoundingly in the middle class. I would never disrespect my mom or dad by telling you I grew up poor. I did not grow up poor. We had a small house, but it was a great house. We had air conditioning and heat and food and Sears Tufts skins, and it was a fun time to grow up in the 1970s on Long Island. And I am the product of a very good public school system in the town of Port Washington. So I'm a big believer in public schools.
Yep.
So my dad, one of his buddies, said, "Hey, where are you going to send your kids to school?" And my dad said, "Well, probably a local college like Adelphi or City Post." He said, "Oh, no, you gotta send your kids to a school called Tufts University." So he came home one night. He told my older brother, "Listen, you're going to Tufts University." My brother said, "Okay, what is that? How do you spell it?" He said, Toughs. He didn't really know. And so we looked it up in the Barron's book, and my brother's like, "Dad, this is like most selective. I don't know how we're going to get into this school, But my brother was very smart. He had good grades. He got into Tufts. My grades were not as good as my brother's in high school. I did well at Tufts. So I got a little bit more academic religion once I got there. But so we both went to Tufts. And then when I was at Tufts, I was looking for a career, and I decided that I wanted to make more money than my dad. And so they were paying lawyers at these like white shoe law firms in New York City $65,000 a year. This is by like 1985.
Right.
So my dad was probably making $39,000, $40,000 at the time. I was like, okay, my God, this is like more money than I could want or need. So I made a snap decision, which most 21-year-olds do. I'm going to take the LSAT. I'm going to go to law school, and I'm going to make myself $65,000 a year. And so I did that.
Okay, and so you went to law school, but then you ended up not pursuing a law career. You ended up going into finance, and you went to Goldman Sachs, I believe.
So to stay on the word association game with colleges, my mother thought it was Hartford Law School. So when I told her I was going to Harvard, she was like, "Okay, that's great. We're packing the car Labor Day to go up there." She's like, "Okay, we're going to Hartford." I'm like, No, Ma, we're going to Harvard." She's like, "Yeah, but isn't it in Hartford?" I said, "No, Ma, it's not in Hartford." So they didn't really know like the different schools or really care about the different schools. They just wanted me to get a legal education. And so when I came home from Thanksgiving, I didn't really see myself as a lawyer. And so I was 2 months at Harvard Law School. I told my folks that I wanted to leave Harvard Law School, and I was going to go get a job, and then I was going to try to get into the Harvard Business School. I thought I was going to be a business person. Well, I don't have a Jewish mother, but I got an Italian mother. And let me tell you something, okay? The Italians don't have Woody Allen, so you have no idea how crazy an Italian mother is or how much guilt they can give you. But so she was like, suicidal. She was moving into the I'm going to go kill myself mode. I said, "Okay, Ma, forget it. I'll finish Harvard Law School." So I did. And I spent the last 2 years of Harvard Law School looking for an alternative career. And I found my way over to Goldman Sachs.
And so you did, interestingly, you did a little bit of investment banking, and then you did asset management as well over there.
Yeah.
Worked in the asset management group.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to say it, but that's not really what happened. I'll tell you what happened is they hired me into the investment bank. I was absolutely terrible at the job. And so Goldman had a good management structure back then. So what do you think happens to you when you're terrible at a job? You get fired.
Nothing good.
OneWire becomes no wire, right? So they fired me. I got hired in August of 1989. I was fired on February 1st, 1991. That was a Friday night, so you could look that up. I remember like it was yesterday because I was horrified.
Sure.
I was a walking junk bond. I had $150,000 of school debt. Mike Fascitelli, who was running the real estate department there, he went on to become the CEO of Renato Realty. Terrific human being. He's a very close friend. He did me the biggest favor that anybody could do. He said, "Look, you're actually terrible at this job. We're going through a little bit of a slowdown, so we're firing you." I was horrified, and I left. They gave me an $11,000 severance check, And I walked out. On Monday, I was back in New York. There were no cell phones. So I had a roll of quarters, and I was putting the quarters in different payphones around Midtown, calling friends or whoever to try to get myself a job. And then somebody I called said, okay, there's a job opening at Goldman Sachs. I said, okay, you got to be kidding me. I said, so where is it? It's in the sales area up on the 29th floor at 85 Broad Street. I said, okay. So the first call I made was to Mike Fastelli. I said, look, you just fired me. I said, but there's a job opening on 29th floor. I'm not a bad guy. I might be better at that job than the one I just got fired from. And so he said, hey, look, you're a good guy. I'll refer you. You'll get the interview at least. And so I got the interview, and I got rehired into Goldman Sachs on March 28th. So I was fired and rehired. So we can glorify that, and we can pretend that I was in investment banking and then I moved over to sales, and we can try to modify history, but that's not really how it happened. I got hired, I got fired, and I got rehired.
Well, I got to say, I love the story, and love the fact that you tell it just that way.
Well, it was humiliating.
Yeah.
Well,
a little humiliation is good for people.
I think so, only in hindsight.
Right.
I think while you're going through it, you never think that it is. But I'll tell you why it was good for me, because, and I say this to a lot of kids, I was so insecure coming out of law school that I wanted the coolest job. I wanted to go to that cocktail party at Harvard Law School and tell people, oh, I'm working in real estate in the investment banking area, and I'm the coolest guy because I got the coolest job. And so the problem with that is that it was the worst job for me.
Yeah.
And so it was a big resonating lesson about you got to do things you really like to do, and don't get sucked into the hype or the social status of certain things. Focus on things that are fun and that you're comfortable doing, and that you're comfortable in your own skin.
You did the banking, you've done asset management, you've done a number of different things, which is fascinating. So when I sit there and try to define who you are as a person, are you a money manager? Are you a manager of a fund of funds? Are you an entrepreneur that has his own TV show now? You've written a number of books. I mean, it's amazing all the various things that you've done. But
yeah, I've channeled the ADD appropriately, probably, right? Listen, I think I'm in the relationship business.
Right.
So I don't really know if I'm in the asset management business or I'm in the television business. But what I think I really am is in the relationship business. And so when I think of my life, I'm trying to build really good relationships. And I think the way you develop relationships, there's a lot of different elements to it, but one of them is consistency. And just try to be a good person to a lot of people, and hopefully they'll return the favor by being a good person to you.
How did you come up with the idea of the SALT conference? Because that thing's been a phenomenal success. Every hedge fund manager I know goes to it. Every analyst wants to go to it. It really is a remarkable event. How did you come up with the idea, and where do you see it going over the future?
Let me tell you something. We were about to go out of business. It was 2008. Our fund was contracting. We were imperiled. We were sitting in this very office trying to think about things that we were going to do to save our business. And we weren't coming up with anything. By March of 2009, the Dow had gotten to like 6,500. The S&P was around 660. That's going back into the mid-90s. That's where the thing was trading. And I thought, okay, this is it. We're going out of business. President Obama came on the air, on the TV. He said, hey, look, now's not the time to go to Vegas. And if you're a fat cat with a private plane, you should land the plane. Any big bank that had TARP money said, hey, whew, they started canceling their conferences in Vegas. So, I understand why they did that. And I also understand why the president even said that, because of the stress that was in the system at that point.
Right.
But that was not good for the city of Vegas, because in addition to the fat cats, there are maids and bellhops and porters, and it really hurt the middle-class community in Las Vegas, and it created a big opportunity. So Victor Oviedo, one of my partners, he walks in here. He says, okay, listen, we're going to create a conference. We're going to go to Las Vegas, create a conference, and we got to do this because if we're right and we're at the bottom of the market, we're going to have a big conference franchise. If we're wrong, it'll be like our farewell party, like the Titanic. We'll be playing the violins on the Titanic.
Yeah.
So I could give you this big, sexy story about it, but that's really what happened. It was an accidental experiment by us, born from the crisis.